following on from the 1st of December, I've got Dan Sadler here with me. Now, Dan has had a rather amazing journey, a rather long and difficult journey to get to the point that he's at today. Now, someday soon, I'm actually going to sit down and I'm going to interview him about that journey because that's a total other story. However, there's one specific part of his story that needs to come out, and it is extremely important, and he's the only person that's able to tell you. So it's over to you, Dan.
Well, hello, Sharon, and hello all the viewers that are listening and watching in. If you're watching this on a replay, just let us know in the comments, because we'd really love to be able to communicate with you after this. So this is my journey about how HIV has affected me. So let's begin. Did the cure for HIV go down with the Malaysian Airlines flight MH17? Now, a little bit about me and my background. I've been partnered now with my awesome boyfriend, John, for 7 years nearly. We have 5 cats, and you can see one of them just there over my shoulder. She's a lovely lady there. We have 5 cats together. And a little bit about my story. So I'm a biohacker. I help people with their sleep and their energy and their health and overall their vitality. So health and wellness is massively important to me. Now, I'm a music specialist. I've been a teacher for 25 years. With my steel drum instrument, I've recorded 5 albums, performed at top venues internationally like the Royal Albert Hall and Artscape in South Africa, and even at the Notting Hill Carnival every year for the last 20 years. In my journey, I've toured over 50 countries, experienced many, many cultures, and I've performed for Her Majesty, the Royal Highness, the Queen, and even had TV appearances with the likes of Billy Ocean. So I've been quite traveled, well experienced, but there are some things in my life that have happened to me in the last 7 years that have changed my perception and changed my trajectory. So in 2013, I moved from my hometown of Portsmouth in the south coast of the UK to London, the big city. Now, I was living in Tottenham. There was lots of work around Tottenham for me as a steel band expert. So I was sofa surfing, living in my mates' houses. There was one period where I was sleeping on the floor at the end of my mate's bed. Literally, I was roughing it. While I was living in Tottenham, I got a job down in the very north of Kent, which is a place called Chislehurst, beautiful part of the world. And this, funny enough, is where I met John. Now, I was sent down to Chislehurst to start this job, and I was teaching in a particular school down here. And as I was coming down on my first day, I didn't make it because there was tube strikes. So I didn't make it in time. By the time I'd actually arrived, I mean, that's not a great way to start a job, but I was late for my first day's work. So the second week I went down there, there was tube strikes again, but I was much more prepared this time. And on my way home from work, I met John, as I said. Now, me and John, we instantly bonded really well. I had to go off on a trip to Nigeria, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But over that winter, it was around December, I got a phone call saying, you need to come to Nigeria because we're going to play at the Port Harcourt Carnival. Now, I'd met John just days before this announcement, weeks before I flew, and it was just before Christmas that I did the trip to Nigeria. And when I got back, I kind of spent Christmas with my family, and then I reconnected with John. Now, I knew there was something special, a special friendship happening there. And I'd kind of been staying down in Chislehurst on Tuesday nights before my Wednesday work. So rather than just coming down to work, I was coming down a day before, and then it turned into a day after. Now, we've been together for about 3 months. And this was when John pulled me to one side and said, look, I've got something I need to tell you. In my wildest dreams, I couldn't have imagined there was anything that he could say that would shock me, but it did. John told me, sat me down, and he knew in his mind that I was perfectly safe. But my mind, my lack of education and my lack of understanding meant that I was in for a shock. Now, John told me that he has had HIV for nearly 10 years at the time. And quite literally, I was petrified. I left immediately. No joke, I left this house, I caught the public transport back up the other side of London. I was back on the sofas and back on the floors again because I was just in panic mode. I ignored John for a good 3 or 4 days. And then eventually I plucked up the courage to actually talk to him again. I was missing him. There was something that was missing out of my life. And I think that the panic and the worry had started to dissolve and dissipate a little bit from me. And I arranged that we would meet up again. And he told me that he was going to help me get a test to prove to me that I was safe. Now, I didn't know that anything about viral loads with HIV. I didn't know anything about white blood cell counts. I didn't know how it worked. I just assumed that anybody had HIV had a death sentence. And anybody that was around someone with HIV had a potential death sentence waiting for them. I was scared of it because, I mean, the stigma, the videos of HIV patients in the 60s dying on hospital beds, the lifelong medications that go with it, and genuinely my lack of knowledge and understanding around it caused me to be this scared. So I was in genuine state of fear. Now, as I said, we went to somewhere in central London. I can't remember exactly where, but we went to a sexual health clinic, and it was particularly geared up to being helping the HIV community because it is quite a large community in London. So we went in. I was absolutely freaking out, and I was so worried that the nurse took me into a private room. And she, rather than just doing the blood test where she would give me, like, take the test, 4 or 5 days later, I get my result. She was so concerned about my state of panic and my state of fear that she gave me the instant test and the blood test. So not only would I get an instant result and I would know straight away, I would also get that confirmation from the blood test, which is a bit more of a deeper test. So she gave me the test. I was negative, and that literally removed that layer of fear that was going on and holding me down. It ripped that layer of fear out away from me. So that allowed me to get into a place where I could start to learn a little bit. And literally, as I said, I was crying my eyes out in the clinic because I was worried that I was going to be hit with the death sentence because of the lack of knowledge that I had led me to believe that you couldn't drink from the same cup as someone with HIV. You couldn't be in the same room without contracting it. Like, I didn't know that how it was contracted. For all I knew, it could have been airborne, and you couldn't be near someone that had HIV. But that again was that understanding, and I needed to change that. In order for me and John to be able to move on, I needed to learn. I needed to understand. So John did something really clever, actually. A really nice way to pull me in was to bring his specialist round to the house, somebody that he'd known and trusted from within the clinic that helps him out. So Bev came round to our house, and she came round to inform me about how HIV works. She came round to tell me about viral loads and about what it means to have a 0 viral load, about how the medications work, not only to allow the person that has HIV to live a normal and happy life, but people that live around them that don't have it. The viral load being at 0 is so important because that removes anything, and like that removes me from any worry about contracting it myself. So, as I said, Bev came round to see us, and she gave me the knowledge that I needed to make the change so that I could get into a state where I could love again. I was still panicking, yes, of course. We were on a learning journey, but literally all the change comes from within. There was nothing that anyone could say to me that would change me. I needed to absorb this information and understand it because it's down to me. Honestly, I could have run away and stayed away, and that would have been an easier life, but I wouldn't be here now talking to you guys about it. I definitely wouldn't have had the success that I've had in my life, my love life, and in my business if I hadn't gone through this journey. So I decided that me and John, that we would beat this, that we would find a way to knock HIV on the head. we felt that with the rise in the information that was available on the internet, that we could find a plan or find a way to get John off of his medical treatment. So we're talking, we've been together for a couple of years at this point, and we started a natural treatment journey. Now, we tried everything. 500 probably pounds a month we spent on buying supplements from all over the world, and we were looking at patents on the internet, because there are patents for the cure for HIV and AIDS. But that stuff didn't work for us. So we were exploring all avenues to try and understand how this virus worked. Was it we were looking, was it blocking things in the body? Was it making the white blood cell counts hide away? Was it something completely different altogether? Well, we still don't know. So we got John off of his medications for 2 years, and like I said, we tried everything. MMS, we tried candida treatments, we tried cell health products, we tried so much stuff, natural compounds, organic stuff. It was very costly, but it was worthwhile, because that was the learning journey that we needed to go on together in order to make me understand and to get into that state of love again. Unfortunately, John's white blood cell count did continue to go up, and the viral load did continue to, no, it was the viral load that went up and the CD4 count that went down. So he had an amazing viral load CD4 count when we came off the meds, and it was like that for a couple of years. But towards the end of our natural treatment journey, the numbers just weren't adding up. So out of fear again, fear for John, fear for his experience on this planet, we went and decided to go back on treatment. And that was a really fraught time with us, because we didn't want to go down a pharmaceutical treatment road. We were looking for any way possible to keep him away from that. But we did make an executive decision that we would go back on to the meds, that John would go back onto the meds. Literally within 2 days, all the markers fell back into line. It was a very, very fast turnaround. But again, we were still slightly concerned that we had to use these medications. Now, I mean, the medications, they are what they are. We would much prefer to have a natural treatment. And I do feel that with the movement around virology and epidemiology that's happening right now due to COVID-19, that we are going to end up in a place where the cure for these things will start to, or maybe more natural treatments rather than cures, but we are starting to head towards a place in the world where viruses are much better understood. And with nearly every medical scientist in the world right now looking into virology, the answer has to be close to us. It genuinely does. So all of this journey that we went on enabled me to get into a space of love and acceptance. And now it is big news, because 18 months ago, I would not have come on camera and told this story. As powerful as it is, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have shared it. I didn't want to share the story with my parents under fear of what they would think, how much they would be scared. I did talk to a couple of my best friends, but it's never been a hot topic of conversation for us because of people's reactions. So now I'm in a more comfortable space where I can actually own it, and I can tell this story, and I can help to empower other people that may be on a similar journey to me. Because the journey that I went on, that me and John went on, was very lonely. We were looking for people just like us that were going through a similar thing. How are other people protecting their HIV negative partners? How are people that aren't taking treatment, as in pharma treatment, how are they surviving and keeping their bloods in count? Well, we couldn't find any of these people. So hopefully by putting this out there, we're going to attract that to us as well. So, I mean, we've gone full circle from being in a state of fear. I mean, John was never in fear, but I was. So I've gone from a complete state of fear into a complete state of love, and that is really powerful. Now, what this has enabled us to do, it's enabled us to start a health and wellness business together. It's enabled me to build a stronger relationship with my parents, because when I did tell them, firstly, about John, and secondly, about what we were dealing with. I expected their reactions to be super negative, but they weren't. They were amazing. It's a funny story with my dad. He didn't even know that I was with John, and he came all the way from America, and I still hadn't told him that I was living with John. He got all the way to Chislehurst in his car, where I was supposed to go and meet him near the Sainsbury's, because that's all he could get on the map at the time. And I dropped the bomb in the car. I literally told him while we were 2 minutes away from the house, and his reaction was ace, actually. So thanks, Dad, for that. I expected much worse reaction, because it's not necessarily my dad, but it was the opinions of his generation that shaped my view on what HIV was and how it worked and what happened to people that had it. And it was that generation that I was fearful of what they thought. So anyway, while my dad was here, we had something happened, and we learned about a flight that flew from Amsterdam to Sydney. And on this flight, there were maybe 100 delegates going to a global AIDS convention. This flight was flight MH17. Flight MH17 was downed over a war-torn country. It was shot down. So I asked the question again, did the cure for HIV and AIDS go down with flight MH17? Thank you.
Now, my turn. We've done this today because we're doing the two perspectives. I'm talking about somebody that actually has the disease. I'm talking about me. The end of 1998, 1999, I started to lose a huge amount of weight. I started to have constant illnesses, vomiting and diarrhea, fungal infections, chest infections, sinus infections, one right after the other after the other. I moved to the UK from Ireland in 2002, and as any woman knows, you always want to, the perfect ideal is slim, trim, and brimful of energy. However, I went from being slim to being skeletal in the space of 16 months. I was a 33, 34-year-old woman wearing age 11 to 12-year-old kids' clothes. Nobody could find out what was wrong with me. I was diagnosed with possible lymphoma. I was diagnosed with possible bowel cancer. And then on top of that, I was eating like anything. I could eat everything and not put on a pound. In fact, the doctor was giving me an extra 2,000 calories a day to put weight on, and I was still losing weight. January 2004 came. My doctor rang me on a Friday afternoon after having bloods done on the Thursday morning. Now, if a doctor rings you less than 24 hours later to give you the results of the blood test, you know there's something not going to be good coming out of the end of the phone call. And I remember picking up the phone, and after going through all the checks, she's going, "Sharon, I think we might have found what's wrong with you, but we're down to 2 options." And I said, "What 2 options?" And she said, "You've either got stage 4 leukemia or you've got HIV. I, being a smart aleck, turned around and said, "I don't like either of those 2 options. Can I have a third?" To which she replied, "No." So I said, "Okay, which one of these is the easiest one to actually handle?" And she said, "HIV." And I said, "Why?" Because in my mind, all that I could see was in the 80s, the Tombstone ads. All I could remember was seeing in the 90s, hearing about this drug AZT, which was supposed to be a miracle cure. And then all of a sudden, the HIV would come back with a vengeance. I didn't know that at the end of the late 90s, they discovered that you have to treat HIV with multiple drugs because of the way it mutates and changes. Anyhow, I said to her, "Look, I don't care what's wrong with me at this point. I just need to find out what is wrong so I can live," because I knew I was dying. I went to, she said, "I'm sending 2 referrals off, and it'll be to," I said, "I'll go to whichever referral comes first." So I went to the referral. I went to see my doctor, my consultant, who has been my consultant for 16 years, and went in, sat down. First of all, could not find his office because it's hidden at the back of the gum clinic, where most HIV consultants' offices tend to be hidden. So this is where you start to get the shame part. And I'm like, this is not real. So I went in, sat down. First off, he takes the complete medical history off me, which at that point I could recite verbatim because I had recited it to so many consultants. He then said to me, he said, you're not giving me the appearances of having it. But he said, just to rule it out, we'll do the test. At that point in time, you had to have counselling pre-test, just in case the test came back positive. And I said to him, I'm sorry, I said, I can't do the test today because of the amount of time I spent looking for your office. I now need to go and collect my youngest daughter from nursery because it was coming up to 11:30. But I said, I will come back in the morning. He said, you better come back in the morning. So went back in the morning, had the counselling, had the test, but it was Friday. So they didn't do the rapid test then. This was the one that had to go away for 24 hours and you had to wait for it to come back. So I spent all weekend trying to put the test to the back of my mind, knowing that I had to be in the hospital at 9 o'clock on Monday morning for the results. So as I'm on the way over to the hospital, I'm looking and I'm thinking, I'm getting it, and my intuition was kicking in, kind of going, it's probably coming back positive. Because in the meantime, the internet had suddenly been born. So I started looking and I started seeing things that I recognized. I went in, sat down, and it was to be on a first come, first serve basis that you get in for your results. And when people that are coming in after you are getting called before you, you know that the news is going to be bad. So I went in, sat down. I said, I know it's positive. He said, how do you know? I said, because I said, you called every other person in first but me. So at that point, my consultant, Yoga, he came in. He wanted to see me. At that point, I then call him Dracula because he takes about 15 vials of blood. He then put me on what's called a prophylaxis to stop me getting ill, to stop me picking up any more infections. Now, I didn't realize at the time that my body was so far down that antibiotic actually gave me a boost. It actually helped my body protect my body. I went back 2 weeks later on the 26th, or 18 days later on the 26th. And he turned around and he said to me, he said, I've got good news and I've got bad news. I said, okay, well, give me the bad news then. He said, you're going on treatment and you're going on treatment today. I said, and what's the good news? He said, the good news is you do not have. And then he proceeds to list out about 18 different illnesses that I could have had. Everything from hepatitis C, all the hepatitis, to gonorrhea, to syphilis, to everything else. I went, that's okay then. But I said, because obviously I had done a lot of research between the 9th and the 26th, why am I going on treatment today? And his reply to me was, you have a CD4 count of 25. You have no immune system in your body. You have nothing. He said, I do not know why you're not in a hospital bed already, because he said you should not be able to function. I went on treatment. And it was at that point he said to me, if this treatment doesn't work, you will not see the end of 2004. That was a bit of a big one to take in. But because of everything else that I was taking in, it was just one of those things. So I left the hospital clutching 2 carrier bags full of medication, read all the instructions, read all the side effects, and very, very trepidatiously and fearfully took the first dose. Because I was so sick, it had to be regimented at 12 hours apart, so it had to be like a diabetic. I was then told in the August that the first line of treatment didn't work, and they had to put me on a second line of treatment. And I said to him, I said, I don't really want to go and change treatment until my mum has gone back home. Because at that point, my mum didn't know. My dad didn't know. Nobody knew. The whole thing is coming, full circle at that point. So at that point, I had told my eldest daughter, and that was about it. So when my mother came to visit, I was hiding my tablets in my daughter's wardrobe. So she wouldn't see what she knew I had something wrong. So I told her I was on some medication for my bowel. Following year, there was a divorce ensued, and then the following year I met somebody, and then it turned into be a domestically violent relationship. And this can happen a lot in the past, and it probably still does, where if you've got a positive partner and a negative partner, you've got the positive partner always petrified of the what if. Now he knew. And after a fight one night, he told my mother in the hope that my mother would walk away. She didn't. My brother didn't. My father didn't. And I know my mom told different people, but again, they were remembering the tombstone ads. My viral load has been 0, and it has been 0 since 2005. My CD4 count 2 years ago was up at 1,500 there or thereabouts. I think it's after coming down a little bit since then, but that's because I have now got an autoimmune illness, which is so rare that they can't find a name for it. So my immune system, instead of fighting HIV, is now fighting itself. But that's another day's story. But what this is about today, it's about the stigma and it's about the shame that surrounds this illness. This illness is everywhere and it is treatable. It doesn't matter where you get it from or how you get it. It's the person that you are now. And I'm just going to tell you one story. I had an operation when I was 40 years old. I will always remember the date. It was the 12th of November. First off, I was left to last on the list because I had HIV. It was an unwritten rule that all HIV patients were treated last so that the theatre could be sterilised for everybody else's use. The anaesthetist did not come up and do the pre-op checks. I first met the anaesthetist in the anaesthetic room, at which point he said to me, "In which part of your body am I going to find a vein that I can put an IV in due to you taking drugs to get your HIV?" I turned around and I said to him, I said, "Stop." I said, "First off, who told you that?" He said, "Oh, we were talking." I said, "Well, you can talk all you like, but I have never taken drugs in my life. So do not dare make assumptions." I said, "Only for this operation, I will be getting off this table and I will be walking out of here." Because they had left me so late in the day and fasting for nearly 24 hours, I suffer with extremely low blood pressure. And if you do not drink enough fluids, your blood pressure drops. And because my blood pressure was dropping, they had to squeeze bags of fluids in. And because they were squeezing bags of fluid in, that was fine with keeping it up. Because I got HIV, they put me in a separate room. And during the night, I could see that the IV wasn't going down. Called the nurse in and called the nurse in and called the nurse in. She eventually comes in and then tries to flush the IV. At which point, because it was blocked, it flew saline back out at her. Now, she was gowned, like she should be. She shoved the line back into my hand where it was blocked. She ran out of the room and never came back. I was then ringing for a good hour and a half for someone to come in, and this nurse's aide came in. She called a nurse. The nurse took the IV line out. There was a litre of saline poured out of my hand onto the floor. They left me go home the following day from hospital with a blood pressure of 76/54. Because I was the last person of the day to be operated on, I got MRSA. They hadn't cleaned the theatre enough for me. People with problems with their immune system are much more open to infection than anybody else. So they had not cleaned the theatre enough for me. This is why this segment is being done, because stigma and shame have to go. And it's only by awareness and education that things can change. And I'm talking change as in acceptance, because even when you've got HIV, you are always afraid, and it is a fear that's very deep down inside. You're always afraid that if you tell someone you've got it, they're gone. So you're always waiting. And then you're always waiting for someone to chuck it at you in an argument. Or you've given it to me. I can't give it to you. If anybody has given it to you, it's somebody else, but I can't give it to you. The thing is, you always need to be aware of it, because it's still there. So just because COVID is around and nobody can, get out and make friends and have dates and do anything like that, there might be a lull in transmission, but you don't know what you have, and you probably won't know you have it. I was walking around not checking all the check boxes. I was walking around not knowing that I had it for a good 8, 10, 15 years maybe. That's how sick I was. So out of this take a couple of things. Terminal diagnosis is not the end. There is no stigma and shame involved with HIV or AIDS. We are human, those of us that have it. We have feelings, we have emotions. Do not treat us as if we are nothing, because we are a lot more, because we have to fight every day to stay alive. That's why Dan and I have done this today.
That was amazing. Thank you for sharing your story.
I'm thanking Dan for what he's done today, and I'm also announcing the next topic I'm going to be covering, which is fear. That's going to be going out on the 6th of December. Tune in, subscribe. Over the next few months, we are going to be working with topics that are very hard sometimes to look at, but we're also going to be doing some of the informing behind the topics, how they happen, why they happen, and how to deal with them. But then we'll also be speaking with the people who've experienced them. So you're getting a mixture of both. And then after Christmas, there's another new exciting venture coming up on the same channel. However, until then, be safe, be careful, and I will see you all on the 6th with fear.